You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Friday, November 17th. The 49ers are getting close to hosting the Tampa Bay Bucs for a Week 11 clash. Here's to hoping that the 49ers could keep building off of last week's win against the Jags. And I'm joined by Laurie Fitzpatrick today, as always on a Friday preview show. But I did promise Laurie to keep the Jags banter light this week. So I'm just going to skip right over it. But then right before we went live, she's like, you know what? I do want to make fun of my team and, just kind of vent. So Laurie, how are you doing? How are you feeling about your Jags this week?
Making a Molotov right now to anybody have a lighter? Do you have a lighter? So I can light this thing on fire right now. Because that was embarrassing. That was so bad. That was, I mean, like I said, the 49ers needed that, but the Jags needed it too, man. They need a humbling experience, and that was one hell of a humbling experience. Like, I know you saw that one clip when somebody on your defense was like, they don't know what they're doing, and the Jags yeah, we don't know. And that may have been the play where like Trevor faked a handoff and nobody was there to fake the handoff with him, and he was alone, and ended up being a sack fumble. I don't even know, but yeah, that was horrible. That was so bad. 3 points, bro. Come on. You gotta be better than that, you know?
Look, I mean, like you said, the 49ers needed it more than the Jags did. I think it just simply showed in how both teams played that day. But like you said, the Jags needed a humbling experience and they got one, and maybe it'll just have them play harder this week. All right. I'm rooting for the Jags this week because they're not playing the Niners. So I hope your team has better days ahead, my friend.
Yeah, they play the Titans.
They can totally win that game. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's more about stopping Derrick Henry, and they always have a good game against them. So I believe they are playing at 1:00, and everybody that's a 49ers fan, your team plays at 4 Eastern time. So just switch on over that Titans game.
We'll watch.
I'm just playing. but yeah, that was that was bad. So moving on, you said, I'm glad the 49ers won though. So in terms of just getting it back, back on a roll.
Yeah.
You guys really needed that. Everybody was on point. You had Wilkes there on the sideline, kind of getting everybody together, and everybody was hustling. So it was good.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, they did need it. And like I said, we're hoping the 49ers could keep it going against the Bucs this week. So let's just get into that preview now. And we always start with the weather. Santa Clara weather is always going to be nice and sunny, so nothing to worry about the rain. I was glad it didn't rain last week, so more of favorable weather. And as far as the injury report, I'm going to start with the Bucs side here. We have safety Ryan Neal, who's declared as out with a thumb injury. As far as the questionables go, you have cornerback Carlton Davis, guard Matt Feeler, and then cornerback Josh Hayes with a concussion, and then linebacker Devin White with a foot injury. Those are the guys who are questionable. But as of right now, I'm just going to assume that, most of those guys will be able to play. Like Devin White, for example, I would expect he's able to go. On the 49ers side, Aaron Banks was declared out pretty early in the week, and that's kind of expected. Guard Nick Zakelj, he's going to be out for the rest of the season, so that's why he's declared out, but he hasn't been placed on IR yet. Kyle Shanahan did say earlier today, Friday, that there isn't room for the 3 players who are on IR to join the 53, so you'll see those 3 names under questionable: Robert Beal, Darrell Luter Jr., and Samuel Womack. They're in their second week of their 21-day windows, but maybe next week is when the 49ers will be making a decision on who gets lifted up to the 53-man roster. And at least one of those corresponding moves will be placing Nick Zakelj on IR. Just like I also wanted to just make this one little note, because Kyle said that they plan to sign Jason Verrett to their practice squad sometime next week. They worked him out earlier this week. So, I mean, that's cool, right? Like just bringing some positivity back with Jason Verrett, a veteran who can help some of these younger guys. So, I mean, sure. I mean, helps the depth. And speaking of corners, though, the 49ers have a big test this week when it comes to the Bucs wide receivers. So that's what I want to start with for the cautious matchups this week. All right. The Bucs wide receivers against these 49ers corners. Mike Evans, for me, being the biggest threat for a big play, given his large frame and how Tampa Bay uses him. Uh, he has 737 yards, receiving yards this year, 6 touchdowns in 10 games. And I also, let's see, I got some Mike Evans screen action here for the YouTube viewers. You can kind of see like where he's most active, where most of his targets come from, and that is the deep left of the field, or at the left side of the field. But where he has done most of his damage is in the deep left. 219 yards and 3 touchdowns have happened in the deep left of the field. And if you look at just depth of target, he's had 16 targets, 16 deep targets, 8 deep catches, 4 touchdowns. So again, that's where most of his touchdowns come from, 20 yards or more. So something to keep an eye on in this one. I want Tashawn Gibson to just be hanging over wherever Mike Evans is, because he's a huge threat to get something going deep. And so that's kind of what I'm like wary about in this matchup, Laurie.
Yeah, no, I would be too. He is the sixth most yards when running a fade and go routes. So that's just, going deep. And so he's a big physical receiver. And that's what he likes to do. He likes to get up and get those 50-50 balls, kind of like an AJ Brown type. And the 49ers are used to playing AJ Brown, so I think they'll be able to defend him this week. But he's definitely the biggest target they have to watch out for. It'll have to be more of a Godwin game if the Bucs want to do well. Like if the Bucs wide receivers want to do well this week.
Yeah, and like Baker Mayfield hasn't been a stranger to throwing it deep this year. I mean, 8.4 air yards per attempt is what he's at right now, and that's 5th in the league. 12.8 of his pass attempts travel 20 or more air yards. That's also 5th in the league. So the 49ers are going to be tested downfield in this one, and that would kind of be my concern. But the Mike Evans does struggle with drops or otherwise just like missed connections with Mayfield. Evans has a 15.3% drop rate. That's highest in the league amongst pass catchers with at least 30 targets. So that's one thing in the 49ers' favor, but just something to keep an eye on. Right. And while I worry about the 49ers having someone who matches up well with his size, I do have to acknowledge Charvarius Ward, who I imagine he'll be lining up the most against, has been solid. Like last week, he didn't allow a catch, 57.1 catch percentage in his coverage. Quarterbacks have a passer rating of 74.5 throwing against Charvarius Ward. So if there's anyone in this 49ers secondary that I would feel good going up against Mike Evans, it would probably be Mooney Ward. So there's always that.
Yeah, he definitely turned it around. I guess I would say turn it around. Just because the last few weeks, outside of last week, obviously, he wasn't playing his best. But yeah, last week he, I think the 49ers in general were able to take away any player that was hot on the Jaguars team, which didn't happen at all. You were kind of worried about Isaiah Oliver. He didn't play over Kirk, I don't think, not once. So like
Yeah.
I just think that they're able to kind of take away those bad matchups and put somebody else over the player that they're actually worried about. The defense on the 49ers, they just do so well at making sure that they're not outmatched on matchups, you know.
Yeah, and I think they do a good job of keeping everything in front of them. Like
Yeah.
somehow that's like even in the bad weeks where they lost games, like I still felt like they did a good job of keeping things in front of them, not getting beat like deep. So, but the other threat that they have on this team is Chris Godwin, who mostly lines up outside just like Evans. So, good chance he'll see plenty of Ambry Thomas, and the 49ers will be depending on Thomas to have another strong showing because this is going to be a bigger test than I think it was last week for Thomas. I know he had a few times he lined up against Christian Kirk. And again, like he played a good game. But my concern with Ambry Thomas is that at some point, like he's just going to lose the mojo or whatever confidence he has. Because that's just been the Ambry Thomas story for the 49ers. And so I really hope that's not the case. But again, Godwin is going to be a tough matchup for Ambry. And if you look at where Chris Godwin does most of his work, it's kind of just like the second layer of the
Yeah.
field.
It's like the
Whereas like
opposite of yeah,
Mike
exactly.
Evans, it's almost like their offense runs in these layers. Like they have one target for every layer. Mike Evans is the deep guy. Chris Godwin is like the intermediate middle of the field guy. And then Rashad White, who we'll talk about in a bit, is their like check down guy. So they have one guy for each level of the field. And so, yeah, Godwin will be getting most of his targets based on this, chart of where he's gotten most of his targets this season. Will be more active in the middle of the field. So, I'm just hoping that Ambry Thomas could keep it up this week against Godwin.
Yeah, no, it looks like they're not even attempting to throw deep with Godwin. So, if anything, it kind of makes him more one-dimensional. That the 49ers should have an easier time when it comes to predicting or being able to defend any part of deep part of the field because they know who's going to get it. It's going to be Mike Evans, and obviously when it comes to the middle, in the short part of the field, it's going to be Godwin. So hopefully they'll
Yeah,
be
you're
able
right.
to do something about that.
It does kind of feel like the Bucs offense is a little predictable
Exactly.
in that sense. So I think that does favor the 49ers. But I know we're all curious about the slot corner because we saw Lenore move inside with Ambry Thomas now outside. And Lenore, I don't want to say like he struggled because like being a nickel is a tough job on its own. But last week he was going up against arguably the best slot receiver in the league right now, and that's Christian Kirk, right? So he gave up 7 catches on 7 targets, 107 yards in his coverage, and the best passer rating in his coverage all season, 118.8. So I don't know. I'm hoping that it just might take Lenore some time to adjust playing at the nickel spot if they continue to have him there and Ambry on the outside. I remember like last year, it took Jimmy Ward a few weeks to get comfortable there. Luckily for Lenore, though, I feel like he draws a pretty easier matchup in Trey Palmer this week. I like Palmer. Like he's a rookie. I think he's going to be a pretty good receiver, in his career. But Palmer has a little under half of as many targets as both Godwin and Evans has. He has just 30 on the season. He has a steady presence in the offense despite not having a huge role, but he also has an 8.3% drop rate for him. So again, like I feel like this has to be an easier matchup for Lenore than it was last week dealing with Kirk.
Yeah, I just think last week was a hard game to judge because the Jaguars offense wasn't themselves at all. Like they didn't even really throw to Kirk. I don't know. I don't even want to. I don't even
Hey,
know.
you brought it up, Laurie. Yeah, we don't have to talk about that matchup. It's okay. Let's get to the next cautious matchup that I have here. And it involves for the right side of the 49ers offensive line. Every week I do this, right? Spencer Burford this week going up against Vita Vea. Because Vita Vea is a beast. He accounts for 20 pressures, 12 hurries, and 5 sacks for the Bucs this season. He also has a 11.8% pass rush win rate percentage, and that's despite being double teamed, the 6th highest rate in the league. And so he's still a very large dude. He's capable of winning his one-on-ones. And the one-on-one, of course, that I'm worried about is him going up against Spencer Burford, because Spencer Burford has shown that he can get pushed around at times. I do have to give Burford some credit, though. I don't know if it was just the matchup. Like, Laurie, maybe you can tell me this, but last week, Burford played his best game of the season against Jacksonville. First time this year he's had a clean sheet, not one pressure allowed, and not even a penalty. So that's good. Props to him. But he has a really tough test going up against Vita Vea this week.
Jacks are terrible. I don't know what else to say. I mean, they're so bad. So Vita Vea. So he switches around the line a lot too. Like, he doesn't just stay. Obviously, he's a nose tackle. And he, likes to line up against the right guards, but he will go to the other side. But I think it's more of a matchup thing to him. So I just think they have to double team him. That's really the only way that they'll be able to, kind of stop him, because he's such a force, man. He's such a force. So that will be about the only thing. And I don't think they blitz like too much. I didn't really look up how often the Bucs blitz.
The third most.
They do blitz a lot, even with the pressure that they get. Wow, maybe the pressure is because they blitz. So if anything, then Purdy, he's great against the blitz. So, but yeah, I would say one thing to look out for would be the Burford, but I wouldn't use last week as a this is a sign of he's going up.
Yeah. See, that's what I was worried about, because I'm like, Burford has struggled all year, and I would like to think that one game is like, oh, cool, like maybe he'll have a good game, but like I'm still taking this matchup against Vita Vea and this Bucs defensive line as, very, very cautious for Burford. But he, like, as you mentioned, I think he will probably, as many times as he could, get some help from the center, Jake Brendel, and they can, maybe double team him a bit, and that might be their saving grace. But even then, I'm sure I just expect to see a few plays where he's getting, knocked down or something like that. But, hopefully not. The other thing that the Bucs defense does well is they have a knack for getting turnovers. The Bucs are tied with the 49ers and the Chargers for third best turnover margin per game at plus 0.9. So that means they're generating more turnovers than their offense is committing turnovers. And they're also tied with the 49ers in interceptions thrown per game, 0.6, which ranks 5th best. So both Purdy and Mayfield have done a pretty good job of taking care of the football this season. And on the other hand, the Bucs are giving up the 3rd least takeaways per game. They're 14th in opponent interceptions thrown per game. So very much middle of the pack when it comes to like getting interceptions. But what the 49ers have to watch out for the most against this Bucs team is their knack for forcing fumbles. They're 12th in opponent fumbles per game. Vita Vea alone has forced 2 fumbles. Safety Antoine Winfield, I think I said his name right, I hope so, has 3 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. He alone also has an interception and 2 sacks. So those are 2 guys right there you really got to watch out for. And just as a whole, they got to do a good job of taking care of the football once again. They were able to do it last week, but could they do it again? It's just something to be cautious about. So that's why I have it as one of my cautious matchups for them this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're good at switches. They can get the pressure. But the thing about the Bucs D is, they started 0-3. So, I think right now they're just like, they're on a roll, and the defense is the best part of their of their whole entire team. So it's something that they're going to be, harping on a lot, is to make sure there's more than, one guy where the ball is at all times. So you just have to be able to, make sure you're holding on to it. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for any yak either. So, because the Bucs D, they're kind of there, wherever the ball goes. And I know I said that last week against the Jags, but again, we're not going to talk about that.
You're the one that keeps bringing it up.
I can't help it, dude. I can't help it because it's still in my brain
fresh.
and I can't get it out.
It's very fresh. Yeah,
it's so horrible, bro.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You have to keep getting reminded here.
No, it's myself though. It's it's not anybody else. Just me.
But the next cautious matchup I have for the 49ers might surprise some of you, but I'm actually going to say Rashad White against the 49ers linebackers. And you might be wondering why. Well, because the Bucs average 78.1 rushing yards per game, 3.1 yards per carry. That ranks 31st and 32nd respectively. But I also feel like they're kind of like the Bucs offense is kind of one-dimensional by choice to me. Like they run like 36.7% of their plays are run plays. But the reason that I think this is a cautious matchup for the 49ers is because they use Rashad White as a pass catcher a lot, and he's great at it. He has a 94.6% catch percentage. That's crazy. 37 targets, 35 catches. He has 326 receiving yards this season. That's second among running backs behind just Christian McCaffrey. So that helps put it into perspective how good Rashad White has been this year. He also averages 8.9 yards per reception. So I'm not saying this as a cautious matchup because I think the 49ers will struggle against this, but it's more so one of those things where it's like, you got to watch out for that.
Keep your eye on it.
Yeah, keep your eye on it because they're not really going to try to run the ball, but they're going to use him a ton out of the backfield. And we need Fred Warner. We need Drake Greenlaw, all hands on deck to make sure that, those checkdowns don't turn into like big plays just because, they're stretching the field and things like that. So something to keep an eye on. I still feel good about, Fred and Greenlaw. And I feel like they looked like their old selves last week, but during the losing streak, they were missing tackles. Things got ugly, for those guys. So I'm hoping they don't revert back to some of those old habits, but just keep an eye on Rashad White because he's really good.
I don't think you'll have to worry about him.
No?
Yeah. I mean, again, you're worried about ETN and 35 yards. That's it. Worried about ETN in the flats. Didn't have to worry about that. So I just think this is the increase. This is going to be, the next game in line that they just tear this team up. I think it's I think they're not going to be able to get much going offensively. So I think the 49ers got him on lock. Rashad White is 26th in yards after contact. He's hit at the line the fourth most in the league. So, and the 49ers, they like to, gang tackle. If there's a guy there, there's going to have be three other guys there right after, one other dude gets there. So, yeah, I think the Niners will be fine. But I was a little surprised when you put that, honestly. Rashad White.
Yeah, I kind of was too, but I think I just wanted to show some respect to Rashad White in this matchup because I know they use him a lot, so I just wanted to make sure, the 49ers are on their P's and Q's going up against White. But I do think that because the Bucs offense is very predictable, like I said, like every guy has one specific role, I feel like. And so like if you just stop that one guy at doing that one thing, then you should be on your way to having a pretty solid game. And this is a good segue to favorable matchups for the 49ers because while I had more cautious matchups than I do favorable, I think the favorable matchups are so favorable that, clearly, obviously, I do still think the 49ers can win this game pretty handedly. And I'm going to start with Brock Purdy against the Blitz. I mean, you said it, like Brock has good experience against the blitz, and he's really good at it. So Bucs defense has the third highest blitz rate in the league. Todd Boyles, he loves to blitz wherever he's gone. And they're blitzing 36.4% of the time. You couple that with the Bucs zone defense, and I think that every pass catcher of the 49ers can have a day, because a lot of these guys on this 49ers team excel against zone defense, especially because Kyle does such a good job of putting them in space, and Brock Purdy does a good job of, throwing with anticipation and also ahead of them so they can, get yards after the catch. After the catch. I am aware that the Bucs have the best red zone defense, but I'm not worried about it for some reason. And I think because the 49ers have shown that they can score outside of the red zone. Like, they do that enough that I don't even think the Bucs being so good at having red zone defense is going to be an issue in this game. The Bucs are giving up 266.9 passing yards a game. That's second worst in the league. I think Purdy can have a field day if he takes care of the football. I think the Bucs are going to have a tough time stopping this offense.
No, I agree. It'll be something where it's more like bigger plays, and boom plays, rather than Purdy dinking and dunking up his way up the field and then them having to make a play in the red zone. It'll be something where Kittle does what he did last week, and he gets open, he beats one guy, because the Bucs D is too busy moving their safeties up and down the field, doing disguises, that Kittle's just gonna outmatch whoever's across from him. So.
Yeah, and Chris here in the comments says Brock plays at his best when he has a security blanket and Trent and his card up my sleeve Debo. The pressure is off him, but the confidence to make the big play is there. Yeah, I mean, I've been saying for a while how important like both Trent Williams and Debo were to this team, during that losing streak. It was so obvious, right? And how important, how much of an impact they make on the 49ers run game, and having those guys back is invaluable. So, I think as long as those guys are there, the 49ers offense is going to be able to score 30 points, just like they did in every game where those guys have been available, right? Like, I just think it makes a huge difference for Brock and this team.
Yeah, I agree.
You mentioned George Kittle, and I do want to talk about Kittle because he's one of my favorable matchups here too, going up against these Bucs linebackers. Good linebackers, like they have Levante David and Devin White, but they're not as good in coverage. And so they're averaging a 67% completion percentage to tight ends per game, both those guys. So tight ends are averaging 6 catches, 57.7 yards. Which doesn't feel like a lot, but I mean, if you look at the tight ends around the league, and I mean, that's not bad. So they don't get they don't give up a ton of touchdowns to tight ends, just 2 this season. But I think the completions will be there. And I think if the 49ers want to target Kittle, I like, Laurie, you mentioned the fact that Kittle can win some matchups here against some of the safeties as well. He does well against zone defense. So, I lost it there for a second. Kittle does well against zone defense. So, and lately I've been liking the way the 49ers have been involving Kittle as of late. So I feel bullish about this matchup.
Yeah, and the Bucs, they gave up the ninth most to tight ends, ninth most yards. So in the 10th most completions to tight ends. So I think this will be a game for Kittle, and maybe it's not like where Kittle's going to take over. It's just those a couple plays where he has huge receptions to kind of get them either in the end zone or in scoring range. So.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like obviously when Debo was out, he had a larger involvement, but you saw like with Debo back, he kind of took a back seat, but they still kept him involved. And it's involved wasn't like a ton of targets, but it was just just enough where he was helping move the chains, right? Like that's really all they need from Kittle. As long as they don't forget that he exists entirely, like I'm happy just seeing him get a few catches that help move the chains. Like that's all they need out of him, I think. So if they continue to use him that way against this Bucs defense, I think it's going to be a good day, not just for him, but even the other 49ers pass catchers as well.
Yeah, I love his energy. To be honest, I feel like he's like a mood changer. Like, once he does something, just like the way that he celebrates, he acts like he's the man. When he does something good, because he is the man. So I like kind of seeing that. I think that whenever they're kind of down or things aren't really going their way, they kind of throw it up to him, and I think it's definitely a changer, mood changer.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But let's get to the Bucs quarterback, Baker Mayfield. I like the matchup against the 49ers zone defense with Mayfield because Mayfield has a quarterback rating of 48.8 against zone. That ranks 18th in the league. He's also holding on to the football longer than most of the quarterbacks the 49ers have faced this year, 2.76 seconds. That could be like part of the reason why they're able to throw the ball deep. He can wait just a little bit longer for those plays to develop. I don't know if he's going to have that much time against the 49ers. Like, certainly if the 49ers play, to the best of their abilities, I would imagine he's going to have a hard time getting it off at 2.7 seconds, right? Like, they're going to get to him. But I will also say it seems like the Bucs have a pretty solid offensive line, including like left tackle Tristan Wirfs. He has a 91% pass block win rate. But he's going to be seeing Nick Bosa and Chase Young this week. So we'll see if that changes anything for them. But I think if you can just have Baker Mayfield either hold on to the ball as long as he has been, 2.7 seconds, and you can get pressure on him, like I think that's a good formula. But even if you make him get the ball out quicker than that, which would be would be different from the norm, I think that can force him into like dinking and dunking. Okay, we're just going to settle for this, and then they're not going to be able to win the game that way either. So I think the 49ers have a good formula to kind of get the Bucs offense off of their normal game.
Yeah, and one set that I thought was interesting was, I mean, it's something that Baker Mayfield has dealt with his entire career, is injuries. And it's like his shoulder, or it's always something, right? But I think it's interesting when Baker goes to the right side of the field, he only has 389 yards, and he's 27th in yards. When he goes to the left, he has 528 yards, and he's 10th in the league when it comes to passing yards. So honestly, just take away the left side of the field, and
that's
I
Mike Evans' side. I think that makes sense why he's so successful on that side.
Isn't that crazy? So just shut him down, and he'll be the 27th ranked quarterback.
I like the way you think. I like those numbers. It's worth noting too that Baker sometimes does scramble. Like he's I think he's at about like 7% scramble rate, at least from another chart that I saw. Like this chart from Sumer Sports has Baker Mayfield at 7.1 scramble percentage. But what's interesting with that too is he has one of the lowest sack rates in the league, the 5th lowest actually. And you look at some of the other quarterbacks who are also have the lowest sack rate, like Patrick Mahomes, obviously like lowest, that followed by Josh Allen, followed by Tua, then Goff, and then Mayfield. So these are guys, right? Like these are guys who, and if you look at Mahomes and Josh Allen's scramble numbers, they seem to correlate pretty heavily with the sack percentage being so low, right? So kind of same thing goes for Baker Mayfield. I think because he could kind of escape the pocket and scramble like that, he could evade some of that pressure. So that's just another thing for the 49ers to keep in mind of and keep an eye on with Baker. But again, like you said, like just keep him from scrambling to the left side, because he's going to be looking for Mike Evans every time. And if it's like a broken play or something like that, there's a good chance he might be able to find him. So just keep that from happening. And I think the 49ers will have a pretty decent day on defense.
I like Keith's comment. Scramble like an egg on a cold day.
Oh, man. So first he said Baker looked terrible at Cleveland the year they had Beckham. I mean, to be fair, though,
the injuries,
but also it's the Browns. Like, I feel like he's looked so much better since just being on that team. Like, even last year when he joined the Rams later in the season, he looked a hell of a lot better. So
that was crazy. That last game, he just like went off. That was like for no reason. That was crazy.
Yeah, so I feel like I kind of feel differently about Baker right now than I do when he was on the Browns. You know, I think the change of environment has helped him out. But yeah, then Keith said, scramble like an egg on a cold day. That's an interesting, like, I've never heard that that phrase before, but I think I'm going to have to use that.
Yeah, me too. That's funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But yeah, so I think there's a few things for the 49ers to kind of like keep their eye on in this game, but overall I feel like the 49ers are by and large the better team here. And I'll just lead it off with this last finish it off with this last favorable matchup. The 49ers against the Bucs shooting themselves in the foot. Because the Bucs are 31st in penalties per game. They average 7.3 a game this season. Last week, they committed 9 penalties. Look, the 49ers haven't been any better these last couple weeks. Like last week, they had 7 for 90 yards. But if they can just improve that, the Bucs are going to do what they do and what they've been doing all season, which is commit penalties and shoot themselves in the foot. So if you're not getting turnovers on the Bucs because they take care of the football on offense, you can at least set your watch to them, committing penalties and hurting themselves that way.
The refs are just trying to keep the Jags in the game, man. Just give them a break.
The refs, that's a whole nother topic. Refs have been crazy this season, but I digress on that. But Laurie, what's your score prediction for this one?
It's crazy. The 49ers, I never realized this. The first 3 games, they scored 30 points in each game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, what? I didn't even notice that before. 30, 30, 30, 35, 42, and then when Trent was out, 17, 17, 17. 3 in a row for 17s. That's kind of crazy. And then he came back, then 34. So I'm going to keep this on the roll. I'm going to go 38 to 10.
Okay, I need to start writing your prediction down just so I remember.
Don't
38.
do that.
Why? No, maybe it's 38-10. Okay, so my prediction, and the more I talk about it, right now, just talking about all these favorable things I just mentioned, I'm like, is this too high of a score that I'm giving the Bucs? So I'm predicting 31-17. But then in hindsight, I'm like, 17 is maybe that's too high.
The defense is no, I don't. Yeah, I mean, maybe 17 is too high, but I don't know. This Bucs defense is good too. So
yeah. Well, that's why I got the 49ers at 31 instead of 34 or above.
Dang. Yeah, this is probably one of the best defenses that they've played. Looking at yeah, who's better? The Browns?
The Browns and the
Cowboys.
The
Browns. I don't know. I don't think the Cowboys are their defense was way better last year.
Yeah, you can argue that for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and argue that the Cowboys are have one of the best defenses. I'm just
you're not going to.
That's not the hill I'm going to die on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
But no, don't do that, Keith. He said, "Do the Bucs score more than the?"
They have to. They have to. They have to. If they don't, then
But
that's
to be
like
fair, like
crazy.
I thought the Jags were going to score a decent amount of points last
Yeah, but
week.
it was a complete shit show. They failed on every single like level. Like in terms of communication, they didn't like they were taking the wrong handoffs. They were like, oh my god, it was horrible. I don't think a team could play as horrible as they played.
But I mean, the 49ers could force the Bucs into a similar kind of,
Dang.
situation, right? So, yeah, Chris says you got a good score prediction. He has a 40-10 Niners because they are 100% healthy and the defense is a lot better with the addition of Chase Young, a lot better. Bucs are going to get smashed. I mean, I love the positive predictions, so yeah, I think this should be a win for the 49ers. Don't look ahead to that Thursday night game against the Seahawks. Just focus on the game in front of them, and they should be okay. In fact, it would be great if they can get to an early lead, if they can, like, pretty much seal the game in the third quarter, maybe get some guys some rest in the fourth. That would be ideal given the short week coming up. So hopefully they can get business done on Sunday. But all right, folks, that is our show for today. Thank you so much for spending part of your Friday night with us. I hope that you guys like this video. Hope you guys subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. And I also hope you guys have a good rest of your Friday, folks. But for now, peace.